All right, welcome back, guys. This should be the second video that you're watching in the lesson 7.7, which is multiplying polynomials. In this video, we're going to teach you how to multiply two binomials together. An example of a binomial, remember, is something that simply has two terms in it. So that right there is a binomial. We're going to learn how to multiply something like that by another binomial. Okay, 3x plus 4 would be an example of another binomial. So we're going to multiply these two things together and see what we get. That was just a made-up example. Let's go to our first real example. All right, so here I have the example x plus 3 times x plus 4. We're going to use a method that we call foiling. F-O-I-L. And as you can see on the left-hand side of your screen, you're going to see what each one of those letters in the word FOIL means. The first letter is the F. That stands for the first terms. Okay, so what we're going to do is I'm going to multiply the first term of my binomial, x plus 3, which is x. I'm going to multiply that term times the first term in the second binomial, which is another x. So if I multiply x times x, we get x squared. Okay, now I'm going to multiply the O, which is the outside terms. So think of the x plus 3 and the x plus 4 as two separate things. I want to multiply the outside. Wouldn't you agree that x is on the outside of my first term and the 4 is on the outside of the second term? Okay, or the second binomial, I should say. So I'm going to multiply x times 4 to get 4x. Okay, now I need to multiply my inside terms. Okay, so the inside is going to be this 3 with this x. Those are on the inside. So that 3 times x, I get 3x. And then lastly, I'm going to do the L, which is the last terms. The last terms refer to the 3 is the last term in x plus 3, and the 4 is the last term in x plus 4. So 3 times 4 gives me 12. Now I'm almost done. The only other thing I need to do now is what, guys? We need to combine our like terms. See how these two things are like terms? I need to combine those. I can't leave those written out. So I have, x squared plus 7x plus 12. And that would be your final answer. That is what you get when you multiply x plus 3 times x plus 4. All right, so if you didn't understand that one, let's pause it, rewind, try again. If not, let's move on to the next example. Okay, here we have x minus 6 times x plus 5. I'm going to follow my FOIL. First, I need to multiply the first terms. That's the x times the x, which gives me x squared. Then I'm going to multiply my outside terms. The outside, remember, is my x and the 5. When I multiply those, I get a positive 5x. Now I'm on to my I, which is the inside terms. I multiply the negative 6 times the x to get negative 6x. And then our last step is to multiply the last terms together. That's the negative 6 and the 5, which gives me negative 30. Notice how I included that subtraction sign as a negative 6. You cannot forget about that part. Okay, so just like we did in the first example, I now need to combine my like terms, which are right there. When I combine those, I get x squared minus 1x minus 30. But we never need to write that 1 unless you just really like it. So we write our answer as x squared minus x minus 30. All right, next example. Here we just have one thing that's a little different than the last one is that I now have a coefficient in front of my x in the first binomial, that 2 right there. Okay? Does nothing different. It's just one more number. So follow our steps. First terms, 2x times x. That gives me 2x squared. Now I want my outside terms. That's 2x times the positive 8, which gives me positive 16x. Now I need to take my inside terms. 3 times x gives me 3x. And then last, we always do the L, the last terms. That gives me 24, 3 times 8. You're never done until you check to make sure you don't have any like terms to combine. Here we do. When I combine my like terms, I get 2x squared plus 19x plus 24. And there we have it. Okay, example 4. Same exact thing. I have two binomials I'm multiplying together. So I'm going to follow my FOIL. First, multiply the first terms together, the 3x squared and the 2x squared. Okay, here, what is 3 times 2? This coefficient 3 times this coefficient 2 gives us a 6. Now I need to multiply the x squared and the x squared. So think about that, guys. That's x squared times x squared. You've got to remember this rule from last week. We add our exponents, and we get x to the 4th power. So 3x squared times 2x squared, we get 6x to the 4th power. Now, my outside terms, 3x squared times negative 7, that gives me negative 21. But also the x squared has to be attached to that. Okay, now I'm ready for my inside terms. Negative 1 times a positive 2x squared. A negative 1 times a positive 2 gives me a negative 2. Got to include that x squared that came from this right there. Okay, now I have my last terms. That's going to be negative 1 times negative 7. Negative times a negative is always a positive. Okay, now I'm ready to see what like terms I can combine. I don't have anything to combine with that 6x to the 4th, no other x to the 4th power, so that one stays alone. But I do see 2 different x squareds, so I can combine those. Those are like terms. Negative 21 minus 2 gives me a negative 23x squared. That's what we learned yesterday or Tuesday. Okay, now my plus 7, that has nothing to combine with. I am finished. Again, you always want to make sure that your exponents are in decreasing order. That's making sure that your answer is in standard form. Okay, exponents in decreasing order. Okay, next example. Negative 5x plus 3 times negative y minus 4. Multiply the first terms together. Negative 5x times negative y. A negative times a negative is a positive. 5x times y. 5x times y is simply 5xy. So that's what we get when we multiply our first terms. Now when I multiply the outside, I have a negative 5x times a negative 4. A negative times a negative is a positive. 5x times 4 gives me 20x. Now I'm ready for my inside terms. 3, positive 3 times a negative y is negative 3y. And then last, positive 3 times negative 4 gives me a negative 12. So now I have to see, are there anything that I can combine together? My first term I had a 5xy. This.
May I have your attention, please?
All right, let's.
Please check your computers.
Hold on. Okay, sorry. Hopefully you didn't hear that announcement too much. Okay, so I'm now looking to see for my like terms. I don't see anything that I can combine here. Okay, nothing in this is similar to another term. There are no like terms. That just means I am finished. I cannot add a 20x and a negative 3y. They do not have the same variable, so I cannot combine those. You are finished. Okay, next example. This one looks a little different. I have x plus 4, that quantity squared. Okay, so it's not the x that's just being squared. It's not the 4 that's just being squared. It's the whole thing, x plus 4, that's being squared. So what I need to do, remember that's the exact same thing as this, x plus 4 times x plus 4. Okay? You have got to write it like that. You will get it wrong if you tell me the answer is x squared plus 16. It doesn't work like that. Okay, so do not do this. X plus 4 times x plus 4. Now we can FOIL this just like normal. X times x gives me x squared. X times 4 gives me 4x. Now I'm on to the I, the inside. 4 times x is 4x. And now the last terms, 4 times 4, that's 16. I want to look to see what I can combine. I see a 4x and a 4x. Those are like terms, right? So I can combine that to get an 8x. And now we have our answer. X squared plus 8x plus 16. Notice how that is absolutely not what we got when we first started, how you guys thought you might have been able to work out the problem. This method, horrible. Don't do it. You're missing out on this whole middle term, these two terms right here, when you do that other way. It's wrong. Okay? So don't get stuck in that trap. All right, let's see what we have left. Let's skip to this one right here, number 8. Okay? Don't let it scare you. Let's just do what we know to do. First terms together, m squared times 3m. Remember, this is a 1 out here, so I have 1 times this 3. That gives me a 3. Okay, then I have an m squared times an mn. M squared times mn. If you multiply those, how many m's would we have? 3, and only 1 n. So that's what we get when we multiply our first terms together. Now I need to do the outside. I have m squared times n squared. Okay? That just gives me m squared n squared. Okay? Now our inside terms. Negative 3mn times negative 3mn. That gives me a positive 9m squared n squared. I have 2 m's, 2 n's. Wrapping it up with our last terms, that's a positive 1m squared times an n squared. That just gives me, oh, I'm sorry, I totally just said that wrong. It's negative 3mn times n squared. That gives me negative 3, 1m, and 3 n's. Okay? Now I look to see if there's anything that I can combine. The only thing I can combine is right here, m squared, n squared. They both have m squared, n squared. So we can combine those, leave everything else the same. Okay? I have 9 of them here and 1 here. That gives me 10 m squared, n squares. And then I subtract my 3m in to the third. And this is what we get. I know that one was quick, so you might want to watch that one again. I'm trying to get this video under 15 minutes so we can get it posted. But hopefully this made some sense to you, and now you guys can practice your homework problems over this. I'll see you later.